Hello, my name's John and I'm a storyteller. I love stories. I hope you do as well. And I've got lots of wonderful stories to tell you. I've actually produced a website with all these stories on, www.biblestorycards.co.uk. You can see all my stories. I'm also a bit of a painter, and so I paint pictures to help me tell my stories. I hope you enjoy them. It's John, folks, the storyteller. I hope you're not tired of my stories. They get better as time goes by, I think. And I hope you're not tired of listening to stories about David, the king. You remember we've had a few already to find out how David became the king and what things happened to him on the way. Well, here's another one. It's actually more the story of a man called Mephibosheth. That's a name and a half, isn't it? Mephibosheth. Well, he was a very important person because he was the son of Jonathan, David's friend, who was King Saul's son. Well, by this time David had become the king. So he was in charge of the land, and Saul had been killed and Jonathan as well. And so this man, Mephibosheth, when he was only a little boy, and it was announced that his father, Jonathan, and his grandfather, the king, Saul, had been killed in battle, and the army was approaching, then because he was sort of the crown prince, he had to escape quickly. And he was only a little boy, and his nursemaid picked him up and started running for her life, really, for all she was worth. But on the way, she tripped and fell, and poor little Mephibosheth fell to the ground. And he fell with such a bump and such power that he fell onto his feet and ankles and broke both his ankles. But of course there was no time to get them bandaged up or anything like that. They had to just run and escape. So he grew up with his ankles all distorted and disfigured, and he could never walk properly. He was always lame. But anyway, David remembered, when he became king, he remembered a promise that he had made to Jonathan when they were both young men. And Jonathan said to David, "David, I want you to promise me something when you become the king." "Yes," said David, "anything you like." "Well," said Jonathan, "I want you to promise me that you will look after, if I die, you will look after any of my children that survive me and that stay alive." "Yes, of course I'll do that," said David. "And you'll do the same, will you?" "Yes," he said, "I certainly will." Well, after he'd become king, he remembered his promise. And he thought, I wonder if there's anyone left that's a descendant of Jonathan. I don't know whether there is, but let's ask around, because he's obviously, this one was obviously in need when his nurse dropped him. And there was a man in the palace, and he was called Ziba. And David knew that Ziba had been a servant of Jonathan. So David called Ziba in and said, "Ziba, I want you to tell me, is there anybody that's left of the family of my friend Jonathan, Saul's son? Anybody that's still alive?" "Why," said Ziba, there's only one, but you won't be interested in him. He's just a cripple. He's no use to anybody. He's just a dead dog, really. David said, "Send for him and bring him here." So they went and they found Mephibosheth. And they said to Mephibosheth, the king wants you in the palace. And Mephibosheth thought, I'm going to die. They're going to kill me because I'm one of Saul's grandchildren. And Saul was David's sworn enemy. And David has called me into the palace. What for? What's going to happen now? I'm doomed. I'm lost. And he came into the palace, and Ziba brought him in. And there he was. He had to crawl on his hands and knees because he couldn't stand. And David got off his throne and came towards him. And Mephibosheth expected the worst. But then David said to him, my son, don't be afraid. I made a promise to your father that if anything happened to him, I would look after you. And you obviously need looking after. Why bother with a dead dog like me? He said, I'm just a flea. Don't be interested in me. No, no, said David. It's all because of your father, Jonathan. I want to show you the kindness of God for the sake of your father, Jonathan. So this is what David said. From now on, Mephibosheth, you are going to come and eat in the king's palace every day. And you're going to be like one of my sons now. And Mephibosheth could not believe his ears. What an honour, what a privilege to be one of the king's sons, even though he was helpless and hopeless. And I think that's a lovely story because it reminds me of what Jesus has done for me and people like me who don't deserve anything from him, but to whom he has shown the kindness of God by coming and taking us into his family so that we can become sons and daughters of the living God. Isn't that amazing? We call that the grace of God, and he's done it for sinners like us.